The 19th century was known as the century of the nations because at that time nationalism became the dominant ideology. Its culmination was reached as the liberal revolutions of 1848 swept Europe in search of freedom, national life, and independent political life within the framework of the nation-state. After the Habsburg Empire's victories over the Turks at the end of the 17th century, Transylvania, until then an autonomous principality under Ottoman suzerainty, became part of the Austrian Emperor's possessions as the Grand Principality of Transylvania. The new arrangement was sealed by the Treaty of Karlowitz in 1699. In a world of aristocratic privilege and strict class hierarchy, Romanians played virtually no political role. But in the 19th century, the Romanian elites were determined to alter their ancillary status. The national struggle in Transylvania took various forms, from pacifist protests to memoirs and petitions, leading to civil war during the 1848 revolution. One of the most important moments in the political struggle of the Romanians in Transylvania was the so-called Memorandum movement. On May 28, 1892, a formal request was submitted to Emperor Franz Joseph I, in which Romanians demanded equal rights with the other nationalities in the Habsburg Empire, and that the policy to Hungarianize the Romanian population be abandoned. At the same time, the memorandum, as the document was styled, denounced the policies of intolerance practiced by the dual Austro-Hungarian monarchy towards Romanians. The petition was personally handed to the emperor by a delegation of 237 people, but Franz Joseph I refused to read it and instead have it sent to the Hungarian parliament in Budapest. In its turn, the Budapest parliament did not accept the petition and returned it unopened to its authors. By that time, however, the memorandum had already been published in the press and could no longer be ignored. In retaliation, in May 1894, the signatories were accused of instigation and put on trial by the Hungarian authorities. The proceedings took place in the Reduta Palace in Cluj, where one of the leaders of the memorandum movement, Dr. Ioan Rațiu, uttered what would become a famous phrase. What is discussed here is the very existence of the Romanian people. But one does not discuss the existence of a people, one affirms it. Dr. Ioan Rațiu, 1828-1902, was a Transylvanian politician, a lawyer and a descendant of the old Rațiu of Noșalat family from Turda, first attested at the beginning of the 14th century, whose noble status was again confirmed by Prince Gabriel Bethlen in 1625 and Michael Apafi I in 1680. Ioan Rațiu studied at famous schools in Turda, Blaj and Cluj, the capital of Transylvania, and later attended theological studies in Pest. The 1848 revolution for him was a turning point that dramatically changed his life. He returned to Transylvania, where he organized, together with other leaders of the national movement, a legion that would actively fight the revolutionary Hungarian army. After the revolution, in 1850 he went to Vienna to study law. Rațiu took his doctorate in law in Pest in 1857. He then worked as a lawyer in Budapest, Cluj and Sibiu. He became one of the founders of the Romanian National Party, the most important organization fighting for the rights of the Romanians in Transylvania. At the trial, Dr. Rațiu and the other authors of the memorandum were sentenced to terms in prison ranging from 2 months to 5 years. Although the following year, in 1893, they were all released from detention by royal amnesty, their confidence in the House of Habsburg was seriously shaken. To attest to the great importance of this movement to this day, the Memorandum Monument sits on Cluj's principal pedestrian avenue, while a memorial plaque at the Reduta Palace reminds of the struggle for national emancipation of an entire generation. The National Museum of Transylvanian History owns a stunning desk set that belonged to Dr. Ioan Rațiu, dating to the second half of the 19th century. The objects were donated by Mrs. Eugenia Rațiu, one of Ioan Rațiu's collateral descendants, in 1984 and have both great artistic and memorial value. They are part of Romania's national cultural heritage. The set is made of metal and contains an inkwell, a tampon, a candlestick, and a paper holder. The inkwell is made of glass with a metal base and lid fixed on a circular support that resembles a saucer. The saucer has an ornamented edge with a repetitive vegetal decoration delimited by transverse bands. The base of the inkwell has a stylized twisted rope decoration. The lid is adorned with acanthus leaves arranged in semicircular registers delimited by the same transverse bands that we find on the plate. The lid has a decorative button handle with a small circular tip. The candlestick has a circular soul decorated, like the inkwell, with repetitive vegetal motifs delimited by transverse bands. The body of the candlestick resembles a goblet with a wide lip and is decorated with an egg-like motif frieze. It has a handled foot placed on a thin plate in the shape of a flower. The wooden tampon has its upper part covered by a perforated metal lid decorated with plant motifs and a simple button-like handle. The set is completed by a highly ornamented silver metal paper support in the rocaille style with a puto head on top and a small metal inkwell at the base with a bird on the lid.